Okay, I thought I'd talk tonight about this phrase that I first heard from Adyashanti. Other people may have mentioned it, but that's where I first heard it. And the phrase is always being, always becoming. So this is one of those phrases that sort of sounds good and sounds somewhat paradoxical, and it is. But what it is really pointing to is something very, very specific and tangible. Um, so I'd like to just explore that some. There was a phrase used by Buddha that was similar. He talked about being is always becoming, which sounds a little more directional, that there's a fundamental beingness and then it proceeds into becoming. And there was also a very interesting phrase by Meister Eckhart, who was a German Christian theologist who lived in, I think, the 14th century maybe. But some of the things that he said sound surprisingly similar to some things that you find in Zen, for example. And the phrase that I'm thinking of there is that this is a Christian theologian, and he said, God is always begetting the only begotten. And by the only begotten, he's not talking about an individual. He's pointing to the immensity of creation, the whole manifest world. God is always begetting the only begotten, the one manifest world, the one universe, the one appearing as an infinite number of forms, always begetting, always creating, always becoming into form. So I find that phrase also very interesting. So let's probably the part of that phrase, always being, always becoming, that we have more familiarity with is the becoming part. We've all been taught, or most of us have been taught from an early age about improvement, learning more, achieving, gaining, growing, becoming educated, etc., becoming skilled at something. And so all of that is fine. Of course, it's very useful in the practical world to have a set of skills to learn how to get along, etc., no problem. But if we come into spirituality and we believe that in order to achieve whatever goals we imagine spirituality offers, that it is a self-improvement project, would be incorrect. It's not about improving this form, this body mind, who we take ourselves to be. Right? It does happen, and it is a useful thing from a very human perspective to do over the course of a lifetime, is to sort of round off a few rough edges, become more skilled in our interpersonal relationships. All of that's great. But if we believe that that is necessary in order to, let's say, become eligible for enlightenment or for grace to shine our way, then that would be mistaken. Because there's something more fundamental that we already are. That's the always being part. Always being because we've never not been that. It is just our essential nature. It's not something that is given to a worthy few or withheld from the unworthy. It's just how life is. It is granted recklessly to all living things. So it's not even a gift in that sense. It's just the essential nature of life itself, to have this sort of this ground of being, and we can call it by different names. The term I often use is awareness or consciousness, or like I did earlier, just the capacity to be present for, to notice, to be sort of alive, and have recognizing that we have that a particular experience. So it's just that most fundamental sense of being alive, being, being, being prior to any way we could possibly define that or limit that. So being prior to, even saying I'm a human, prior to saying I'm this gender, or I'm so and such years old, or I am, a doctor, lawyer, whatever, a cook, cleaner, however we define ourselves, is on the surface in a sense, because there's something more fundamental, and that is just this aliveness, right? That we can see not only in humans, but we can see it out in nature too. We can hopefully easily see it in nature, see animals are alert to their surroundings, aware, able to function, able to feed themselves. Trees certainly are able to respond to their environment. Bacteria too, sometimes better than we would like, but they have that capacity to sense into their environment. Where humans differ is that we have the capacity to a much larger extent, apparently, than other life forms on this planet, to be able to recognize that we can have this knowingness about our essential nature. All life forms have it, but then there's this ability to recognize that we have it. So this is what I'm pointing to as the always being part, the sense of recognizing that essential nature is there from the get-go. It's not given, and since it's not given, it can't be taken away. It is our nature. It's not dependent on what we achieve. It's not even dependent on what we believe. It is just our nature. So that's the always being part. And this being has been there from, we can't say how long. Certainly this lifetime, because even at the moment of birth, there's clearly consciousness present in the young baby. There won't be words. They haven't yet learned the terminology, but there's clearly presence, awareness, the ability to see, hear, touch, taste. They won't be describing it in words, but they'll be having the experience of hearing sounds, of the body movement, breathing, sense of touch. Right, so that's all always been there. So if that's the always being part, where does this always becoming come in? Because there is this always being is an aware presence. You could say an awake presence. You could say spirit if you like. You could say soul if you like, especially if you don't take that to be an individualized soul. But then there's this capacity of awareness that's having a human experience through these body minds. And so that's where the becoming part comes in. Because this awareness, although it's complete, from the get-go. It's not improved upon. When you hear spiritual people talk about becoming more aware, the awareness is fine from the start. Awareness doesn't need improvement. But what they really mean, they may not know that they mean this, but what they really mean is that they're becoming less prone to being distracted from this fundamental nature that we all are. Distracted by thoughts and beliefs and ideas and opinions. So we should also point out that thoughts will happen. Thoughts themselves aren't a problem. What gets us hooked is the belief in thoughts. If there's just thoughts passing through our mind, so what? But if we believe like this thought is true, or I shouldn't be having that thought, or this is right, or I'm sure my opinion about that person is true, those are the thoughts that get us in trouble. So it's not the thoughts themselves, it's actually our relationship to the thought, or probably more accurately, our believed thoughts about thoughts that we may have. So this process of becoming is really much more about subtraction than addition. It's much more about seeing through illusions, things that we believe but aren't actually true, or maybe partially true but not entirely true. So it seems like many spiritual people chase the fruits of awakening. I want peace, I want love, I want unity. That's what I want. How do I get more of that? Well, those are natural attributes when we diminish the amount of illusions that we carry around. Those attributes tend to reveal themselves more and more. It's not like we have to fabricate them. It's not like they're absent now, but they're just obscured by all the thoughts and beliefs and opinions and ideas and judgments and regrets and fears and all of that. So it's actually much more productive to see, to really, sort of root out the illusions that we may be carrying around, the misjudgments, the misunderstandings about ourselves and other people, all the judgments about how the world should be, how I should be, how the other person should be, what they shouldn't have said, etc. So that's by eliminating those beliefs and those concepts that obscure our fundamental nature, obscure the sense of always being, is much more productive than trying to chase the good stuff. Chase the peace and enlightenment. How do I get that? Only really ends up in chasing a concept about that, because we can't really know what that is. No matter how much we've read or heard about it, we can't really know what that is until we see it clearly. It's already present. It's a matter of recognizing what's already present. And the way we come to that more clearly is just by eliminating the things that obscure it. Which is really, it's really what meditation is for. The purpose of meditation is not to become a really good meditator. And the purpose of meditation is also not to forcibly still the mind. That's a popular fallacy. The real purpose of meditation is to watch the mind, to see its mechanics, to see all the gymnastics that it does, to try to justify itself or defend itself or prove itself right or worry about itself or work on its self-image, all the things that the mind does. So that's what we get to have a front row seat for during meditation, because nothing else is happening other than whatever show our own mind happens to be producing. So this always becoming part, even though this fundamental beingness is always being part, even though that is already there from the get-go, already complete, that can be recognized in a moment, a fraction of a second. It doesn't require a peak experience. If it's always being, if it's always our essential nature, it doesn't require a special circumstance to notice it. It's as present when we're doing something mundane as it might be during some peak experience. The peak experience is the effect. It's not the cause. Peak experience is the elation that we feel when we're no longer so self-absorbed. So if that always being can be recognized in the moment, that's true. But this always becoming doesn't have an endpoint to it. Because the always becoming part has to do with our physical body-mind, this that is in the world of form, and being of the world of form rather than the formless awareness. This world of form is just a denser structure, so it takes a while to penetrate, maybe a long while. Jed McKenna talks about this state of being done, and it's true that at some point this sense of seeking out of a sense of lack is done. We feel like once we've found what we were looking for, namely this ground of being, that settles that question. But then there's still this becoming part, which even Jed McKenna talks about taking about 10 years to sort of get the hang of it, learning how to operate in the world from this spacious place of emptiness. Because it's a whole different way of functioning in the world. It's no longer from a sense of being separate from the world, little me out in the big world trying to get by. There's really a sense of the world appearing within that which we are, namely this awareness. It's a whole different paradigm, whole different perspective, and how that feels, how we function, knowing that may be a little odd for a while. It may feel good because it's such a relief, but it also may feel a bit odd, like I'm not quite sure what to say. Not quite sure what to do. The things that I used to do from a sense of personal achievement, future goals, don't seem to have the same kind of juice that they used to have. So where does that leave me? And we find ourselves probably much more functioning out of a sense of joy and curiosity as to the next moment, rather than sort of pursuing some goal out of a sense of lack, or to justify my existence. We might just question, well, what do I do? You know, what happened to this um, sort of ambition to get to some future place that I thought would bring me more happiness than is available now? What about that? What happened to that? So it's sort of it takes some time to get used to. In Zen, they talk about give it 10 to 15 years before you try to talk about it very much. That's actually very good advice, because the inclination is, I've realized this, I'm going to tell all my friends, I'm going to convince my parents, they'll finally understand me. Probably not. They may be puzzled by it. You may see your enthusiasm, but it's better just to let it be, because any attempt to talk about it too soon is really reconceptualizing it, reducing something that is beyond words back into words again. And at some point, that's possible to do without losing sight of what the fundamental understanding is. But if it's done too soon, it can pull us back into this almost gravitational field of this certainty of being a separate self. So I would caution against that. Just let it be. Let your behavior, your joy, or whatever do the talking, rather than trying to explain it or characterize it or describe it somehow. So these two seemingly paradoxical things, always being there from the get-go, as is complete, the immensity of our fundamental beingness, is the innate piece of it. And then there's this always becoming, always learning more and more about how this awareness functions in this world of form, how this body-mind moves in knowing what we then know about who we essentially are. The questions about, well, how do you act? What do you do? That may not be immediately obvious. And it just takes a while for that to just become one's normal state of mind. I mean, looking back at our life driven by, a sense of having to prove something about ourselves or justify our existence, or, move the needle from unworthy to worthy. All of that just doesn't compute anymore. And so there's just a relaxation into what I would call just our natural state, our state of being okay, a state of being comfortable in our own skin, state of being not opposed to the world, not feeling like an alien in the world. And then life just unfolds as it does. So this always becoming is really coming into alignment with how life actually moves. There's in the Bible, there's the statement, "Thy will be done," and it can be interpreted as somehow we're sort of relinquishing our personal will to the divine. Okay, you win this time, I'll relinquish my personal will, which I highly value, and thy will be done in this case. But it's really, if it's all one, by that I mean the entire manifest and unmanifest and potentiality the totality of existence, other than which there's nothing outside of that. If we're talking about the divinity in that way, then there's actually no such thing as personal will to begin with. So it's really, thy will be done is really an acknowledgement of how things are. But we can acknowledge that, but actually relinquish ourselves into the primacy of the life as a whole is a whole different movement than just a mental exercise. So that movement of surrendering ourselves to, let's say, the immensity of life, that that seems to take some time. It's not something that can be decided. It's something that where this personal will, it's more like an erosional process where it becomes more and more difficult to believe that we are separate. That may be seen in the flash, but the reality of that, the implications of that, may take some years to really seep in.